Right, good afternoon. This is Paul from Paxton's. At Avonfield Kitchen down at Hilton with Craig Stone. So anyway, Craig's been a friend, client, yeah, time passed, for probably nearly 7 years now. So yeah, when I remember Kerry and Craig, when they first came into the office, he was a lot younger then, but I've not changed, you know. I've just not aged, but he's aged a lot. And they just popped into the office one day just to introduce themselves, not long after we opened for business. And we just got on brilliantly well from the start. We've remained to be really, really good friends since then. We've done some work together. We're doing some work together at the moment on a potential project and hoping for another couple as well. But when I first met Craig, he was at the RUH in Bath at the hospital, and I think he was doing facilities management, maintenance and all that stuff, wasn't it? Yeah. And I think you had a few rental properties and stuff like that at that point, didn't you? I don't know how many you had. How many did you have at that time?
Yes, I think when we started, we were renovating some properties that had no rentals probably at the time.
Oh, right,
so I think
okay.
We started when we got our first rental 5-6 years ago. So
right, okay, right, yeah, okay.
At that point, it's just flipping properties.
Okay, but I mean, you know, Craig's, I used to call them, and it's probably a bit of an overkill, this one, but I used to call them and just still describe them to people as my little entrepreneurs, but they're not mine at all. But you know, just in trying to describe who they are, because Kerry and Craig are, you know, for me, are a real success story. You know, they've done, for their age, I think they've done really remarkably well. You know, a bit of the Midas touch, really. And you know what Craig's going to talk in a minute when I stop. And once he starts, he will not stop. And I've told him he needs to talk slowly because he talks quicker than I do. And I struggle to keep up with him. So anyway, he'll talk in a minute and he'll tell you a bit about some of the projects that he's doing now. But, you know, I can remember when, don't know how long, probably around 5 years ago, when Craig was at the RUH and he popped in the office one day and he was talking about this concept of going out by himself. And, you know, for me, you know, I've had a few people say that to me, and I think, you know, for me as well, when I started my business, I think it's one of those things that, you know, you can either talk about it for a lifetime and never do it, or you can take a step of faith and do it, and to the best of your ability make it work, or don't. But if you never take that step, the same as anything, you just don't go anywhere, do you? You know, and then you get to older age, you know, and you regret ever having, you know, not made that decision. But I think you've done that, you know, and it's really worked out well because you've got a huge amount of projects. We've just been sitting inside actually and having a coffee and having a chat about, you know, what Craig's got going on at this moment in time. And there's a lot of it, you know, and I think probably one of the biggest challenges, we've just been having a bit of a laugh actually. Craig was telling me about, what was that children's film?
Oh, Zootropolis.
Zootropolis, yeah. Right. So anyway, if none of you have watched Zootropolis, you have to watch Zootropolis. And I'm going to, when I get back to the office, I'm going to get Nick and myself, we're going to try and find this thing on YouTube and watch it. Because I think it could be quite educational for adults, even though it's a child's thing. And by the sounds of it, Craig's learned a lot from this thing. Actually, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. But anyway, so what have you got going on at the moment in terms of projects? What are you working on now?
So we're currently doing a 2-bed new build on Seymour Road. It's a property we already owned. Finally got planning for a 2-bed a bungalow attached to it. That's probably 4 weeks away for coming onto the market, so coming on the market very shortly. We have got a 4-bed new build. We're going to start shortly on Horse Road. Hopefully June next year that one will be complete. We've got a large 4-bed, sort of high-end A1 going on in Beanacre. Again, this one's due to start this week. Again, it'll be sort of probably July, August time next year that all will be finished. Got a couple, got one in planning at the moment, which is a site in town near the toy shop, which we've got planning in for a 3-storey, 6 one-bed flats. And we have one going through at the moment with yourselves, sort of near Yarnborough, West Ashton Way. and we're hoping to get a few units on that one, all new builds again. So yeah, so
You've got a few going on at the moment.
Going on, yeah. Yeah.
Do you actually ever find any time to sleep? Are you working all the time?
A lot of work, yeah. I would say both myself and Kerry, yeah, a lot of hours.
Yeah.
We've actually got another offer gone in today for another site, which is an old building with planning for 5 houses on as well.
Okay, brilliant.
So yeah,
Brilliant.
Lots going on.
Yeah, well done. I mean, you know, Craig knows this. You know, a lot of my experience is on sort of major construction projects. You know, sort of from, I don't know, 200,000 to 200 million. So you know, quite a variety. Most of it being commercial, but obviously I've done some residential as well. I don't know how many, but you know, a fair number. And I think that you know, there's a lot of people that talk about, yeah, we'd really love to find a plot and build our own house. And I think that, you know, everyone watches grand designs, or the most people, you know, majority of people do. And you know, obviously, I think the majority of people on something like grand designs, they tend to encounter lots of different problems, whether it's refurb or whether it's new build, you know. And I have a bit of a philosophy, and you know, I've never had this conversation with Craig, but I'm guessing it's probably the same, is that, you know, I've done some really big refurbs, the Home Office 200 million being the biggest. I've converted and refurbished a Grade 1 Benedictine Abbey on the shores of Loch Ness, built 12 houses, and also the Brighton Dome and Museum as well. And I think the thing is about refurb is it is really hard to predict and budget on a refurb project, because there's so many unknowns and so many unseens, and that when you're going to do this, that you need to build in a fairly high capacity amount of contingency on it, well over and above what you might say a 10% on a new build. And I think that, you know, in my experience, it'd be interesting to get Craig's opinion on this. You know, in my experience, new build is far easier to do generally, as long as you know that the ground conditions are okay, because you spend a vast amount of money in the ground. You know, everything below the ground is unseen. Everything above you can really budget. So, you know, if you're doing a new build project, you really want to be looking at really doing some real decent soil tests to see what you're actually building into. And we've just been having this debate about hand digging through clay in Trowbridge, which can be quite a challenge, particularly if you're doing a really long run, because there's a lot of clay. But, you know, generally on the whole, I'd say, you know, if you can get the groundworks, you know, in terms of the budgeting right, the rest of it in terms of above ground, you can usually fairly accurately budget, can't you? But it's everything below that soil level, that below ground level, really is where the issue is, isn't it?
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. Is that what you've experienced?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, when you do your new builds, exactly say anything that's below ground is obviously your unknowns. So that's where any expense is going to go. Everything above ground is fairly easy to sort of cost up. Obviously know what your prices are and what your price per square metre is going to be. And it's also all known. As soon as you're on the ground, it's generally plain sailing after that. And go back to renovation, refurbs, listed buildings. So obviously a lot of money gets swallowed up on the actual taking it apart before you can put it back together. So obviously there's a lot of actual manual labour initially to get it to the stage of putting it back together. And obviously with a listed building constraints, sometimes you're doing sash windows, etc.
We've got English heritage involved and
got
stuff like that.
Conservation contractors and the likes. It's money disappears at a fast rate.
It does, and I think you know, I think one of the interesting things is obviously, you know, we talk about the implications of COVID. You know, it's affected so many people in so many different ways since it materialised, and you know, not certainly just from a health point of view, from a mental point of view, but I think all in terms of, you know, the manufacturing aspect as well. Because one of the big things has obviously been, as Craig will know, and you know, anyone within the construction industry will understand, is that, you know, material prices have absolutely soared, steel prices, timber, but not just the prices, the availability and the time waits for trying to get these materials. And in a lot of cases, I think, you know, there's been constraints on how much they'll actually deliver, which actually is, you know, if you're going to order a load of concrete in, but you can only get half a slab in, it's not really ideal, is it?
Yeah, definitely.
Have you had that problem?
Yeah, so labour wise, I found it's been generally fine. The biggest issue, like I said, has been materials and material costs. Some of the timber has gone up 3-4 times the cost pre-COVID, and the lead times again, similar to what you're saying. We've had some stuff on 16 to 20 week lead times. So obviously, when you're trying to plan a project, get it in place, plan your labour, your finances, when you've got lead times to that extent, and then halfway through the lead time, an extension on the lead time, it makes planning very difficult.
Yeah, I can
and
imagine.
it pushes jobs back quite a long way.
Would that, talking about building regs, we were talking about building regs changes and stuff like that, and I think, obviously building regs change fairly often. Is that if you were, this is a bit of a question for you, this one, or it's not a test, no prizes, no points, is if you were in the middle of a build and due to material supplies and so on, the actual the build end date was delayed past a change in the building regs, would that have an impact upon the build, or is it the planning stage that the building regs are approved?
To my knowledge, I would say, it'd be at building regulations approval stage.
Yeah, that's
so
quite
so obviously the planning is one thing, but building regs is a complete different.
Yeah, it's a different department.
Different subject.
Yeah.
So I think if you had building that part confirmed or approved prior to change, fine.
Yeah.
It's a new change, and obviously then you've got to comply with the newest standard and have that date of sign off.
Yeah.
So it's down to the date of sign off from the regulation change.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fair. So what's been, I know, I know the answer to this already. I've had the heads up already, but anyway, what's been the biggest challenge for you so far in your experience since you started, building, developing? What would you say overall has been the biggest problem for you?
I think at the start it was getting the right properties or the right land for the right price. I think over the years with experience, knowledge, networking, that's become more available. Problem at the moment is the finance probably side of things. Obviously there's a lot of projects on the go. Each one obviously takes a fair chunk of money. So no matter how big your pot is, you sort of get to a point you think, if we had X in the bank, we would be fine.
Yeah.
And then it's Y, and then it's Z, and then so I think the biggest thing is finance, is cash flow, and then with the uncertainty at the moment with material costs, lead times, sometimes that finance can drag on because you can't complete a build, so the finance costs go up, and it's sort of having an extra safety boundary at the moment.
Yeah.
And a pretty key one, like I said, is, as with any business, is cash flow.
Of course it is. Cash is king.
It's always good to have.
Of course it is.
Having a pipeline is essential, but at the same time, cash flow is.
Oh, without a doubt. I've always said the same as a business owner. No cash, no company.
That's it, yeah.
It's really the end result. And and I think one of the difficulties when you're talking about that, going back to things like labour costs, in terms of material cost rises during the project, because obviously when you buy the land, you base the price and the build costs on where you are at that time.
Yeah.
But any other increases in material costs, labour increases, and that come off your bottom line at the end of the day, don't they?
Yeah.
So you never see them go down.
No.
Do you? Ever?
Yeah. So exactly that. Luckily, at the moment, or unluckily, a lot of things are getting stuck in solicitors at the moment. Searches or other issues, or finance companies are putting a lot of additional constraints in place, so things are taking that much longer. So the only benefit is with the house market at the moment is obviously the end price of the house has gone up with it. So at the moment it's something we can sort of ride with the market. If house prices are obviously flat, and then obviously we still have the uplift in material costs.
Yeah, that would be hit.
The
hit
margin
hard.
hit, and I think again over the years, more and more people entering this sector. So there's more competition, so the bottom line is being squeezed.
Yeah.
I'm not going to plead poverty or anything like that, but the margin has it smaller, so it's just a case of making sure it's big enough to take a few.
Absolutely.
Having that contingency.
It's all about contingency.
And also trying to keep the heads up on material costs. Obviously, a lot of people can sort of give you an indication of where they're going, just through sort of your local suppliers, your contacts. So just try and keep all the time just trying to.
It's about negotiation, isn't it?
And
Suppliers
keeping
and everything.
ahead of the game almost as well.
Of course.
If there's, it's a happy medium. It's trying to get ahead of any sort of shortages coming up without being stupid about it or being greedy about it.
Yeah.
But obviously, like going back to the previous question regarding COVID, at one point we're only allowed 5 bags of cement, and obviously 5 bags of cement a day doesn't go anywhere. When you've got several people on site, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it has been difficult, but it's been a case of just overcoming it to keep pushing forward.
And if you could, if there was anything you could change, not necessarily you as an individual in terms of the whole process, something that frustrates you more than anything, what would be that change?
Speed.
What, speed of build or speed of process of buying?
I think the speed of build it can be relatively fast.
Yeah.
In realistic terms, I think it's more about planning.
Yeah.
Legals. Legals. Yeah, the discussion we were having earlier about legals. At the moment, planning is obviously there's quite a lot of delays because of COVID, because of backlogs. So it can take anywhere between 3, 4, 5 weeks before the local authorities are registering things. But also solicitors. At the moment, there's a lot of to and from, a lot of questions sort of not being answered, a lot of things taking a lot longer than what I feel they should take. So I feel like actually most things now are taking months longer than what they were. So if something previously was taking 12 weeks, at the moment it's probably taking more like 5 months. So it's the additional time, which is, again, and it's trying to plan your workforce, plan your finances, and keeping everything up to date with a time schedule you don't know.
And I think the problem with both of those aspects is it's difficult to budget and it's difficult to forecast. You know, it's not a great recipe.
That's it. You wouldn't want to do business every day like that. So
well, I'm glad you don't. But it sounds challenging from the conversation we were having earlier. Doesn't it? It sounds like it's been fairly much like that all the way through, isn't it? Well, I know Craig's got a zip off in a minute, so I was clock watching. So I think that's about it in terms of anything else you can think of. Any advice for anyone that's contemplating becoming a developer? Come on.
I say if anyone is thinking of going out on their own, thinking about setting up a business or anything along those lines, if you've got enough get up and go to do it, then do it. I know lots and lots of people have sort of gone out and set up on their own, either as a subcontractor, as a business owner, and I would say every one of them has had success to the point that they've quite happily covered their previous salary with a new business and more. It's definitely a better work-life balance. Most of the time better financially. So I think if you've got enough get up and go for it. It's one of the best things you do.
Yeah, great, excellent. Next, I'm going to collar Craig for another interview at some stage, and we'll get another subject. So actually, an interesting one. You probably know the answer to this, but you might want to go and research this as well. The question is, I'm not going to ask him the question now, it's just going to sow the seed here, is what would be his preference in terms of traditional build or timber frame, and why he would choose one or the other, for what reasons and what benefits he sees in one type of build as opposed to the other. Because I think there's a lot of people that don't understand necessarily the concept of timber frame in the strictest context, and I think that it's something that actually be worth exploring, because I've done both. We built the family home up in Scotland in 2011, and that was timber frame, but I'm not going to tell you what my view is, good or bad, on timber frame. We'll explore that next time round, but I want to see what Craig thinks about it, so he's going to have to go home and get his textbook out.
I'm ready.
He's ready. Look at that. Maybe we'll do it now. No, we're going to save this for the next time, and we'll have this debate. I'll be interested to know what he thinks. So, thank you very much for that, Craig. Yeah, we've been planning this for a while. It's taken a while to get here, actually, I've got to be honest. But anyway, that's life. But I wish you well with this afternoon, and love to all the family. Until we meet again.
Not long.
No. Yeah, no, it won't be.
Yes.